talk about this, I still think about how many people, as I'm saying all of this, their faces are still glued in their phones. And it's like shoulder shrug. I get that. Because what's on this side of the screen that's worth living for most people? When we create a world that people just want to check out from. We've beaten it into your head that there's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as meaning. There's no purpose. There's nothing out here except for conflict. We set people against each other constantly. There's this constant raging going on online, and we're convincing people that we all hate each other and this world is terrible. Why won't an asteroid just come and wipe us out? Who cares? That's the indoctrination we get hit with after a while. And you can always you just look at this and go, where is this headed? And if you just think about it for a few minutes, you can see it. Science creates the atomic bomb. Metaphysics discusses whether or not we should use it. That's the difference. Science doesn't care about those metaphysical concerns. Scientists sat around during the Manhattan Project and were so fascinated with this idea that we could split an atom and make this atomic, this massive thing go boom. And they were fascinated by it. And it's so funny to watch in retrospect because these are the smartest men. These are the men in suits. They have pipes and glasses. They look serious. These guys know what they're doing. And they stand in front of chalkboards and they roll up their sleeves, still wearing slacks and shirts. And they're writing equations up on the board and they're saying, with science, we can do this. And then nobody asks the question among them anyway, should we do this? Which is fascinating, by the way. It's fascinating to me because why did we build the bomb, the atomic bomb? Why didn't Germany build it? There's a really good reason for it. The Germans were ahead of us. The Germans were the ones who first discovered you could split the atom. And by the way, this is a reason that I bet that nobody in here, I bet that most of us in here probably wouldn't know why. So I know that I'm asking this rhetorically, but it's worth thinking about. They were ahead of us on all the technology. They were ahead of us on rocket technology. They were ahead of us on nuclear technology. Again, they were the first ones to discover this could even be done. So why didn't the Germans do it? Here's the reason why. They didn't want to, because they knew that if they did it, Hitler would use it. The German scientists were the ones who sabotaged the work. And we're saying, yeah, we can't do this, man. If we do this, we know he's going to use it. That's why we got there first. The Japanese almost got there first, but they didn't have enough of the uranium, right? Uranium. They didn't have enough of the nuclear stuff to actually make the bomb. Because they had some, and then one of their submarines sank, coming back with it. Yeah, which sucks. It sucks for us today because you realize that there's a submarine at the bottom of the ocean that has enriched uranium that's just leaking into the ocean right now. It's off the coast of Florida, in case you're concerned. I know. Wind is amazing, isn't it? So it's interesting that the ones who we think of as being horrible and terrible, they ask that question, should we though? Should we? And it's amazing the kinds of things that we ask and the things that we don't. Science doesn't do that. Science tells us how to build an atomic bomb. It doesn't tell us whether or not we should. Science tells us that how to make, penicillin. It doesn't tell us whether or not we should. These are these two very different parts. And so when we rely too much on science without the other part, we get things like the atomic bomb. And it's interesting to me because the people who were building it, they knew what they were building. They knew they were building a bomb, and they could justify it in their minds, like, well, if we don't, somebody else is going to. But now you can start to think about all kinds of incredulous things that we can justify on the grounds that if we don't, somebody else will. What's funny to me is after we used the atomic bomb, all those scientists were like scratching their chins and just being like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. We aren't the ones who dropped the bomb. We just made it. Those politicians, those terrible politicians, they're the ones who used it, not us. Can you believe how evil and wicked and terrible they are? And scientists try to wash their hands of the things that they create. There's no mystery to them. They didn't think they were building an energy plant. They didn't think that they were providing clean energy to the world. They didn't think that they were making food or something like that. They knew exactly what they were doing. And we have this tendency that when we're looking for the right thing to do, right or wrong, we look to smart people a lot of times. Smart people can't necessarily tell us what we should and shouldn't do. They can tell us how to do things. They can tell us how to make the bomb, but not whether or not we should. And of course, I'm not saying that those people are not smart, but this is where the philosophers come in. Should we do these things? Like there's one right now that strikes me, especially right now. Do I have to go into it? Second and fourth periods got to hear it. Went dark, man. Did you hear about it? Yeah, it goes dark. I'm thinking about, why not? We'll do it one more time. See if it comes across in this class. Think about other things that we're developing right now, and we're not even really asking the question about whether or not we should. And we're justifying it on the grounds of, well, if we don't, somebody else will. Last Friday, we had a meeting in the English department, and we're asking this question about what we should do about AI. I don't know if any of you guys have heard about this, but there are students who are turning in like their English homework and their chemistry homework and their mathematics homework, and they're having ChatGPT do it. Can you believe this? This is unreal. This is unbelievable. So they're asking this question, how do we combat that? And there are teachers up there who are saying basically, nothing we can do. We just have to give in, and then it becomes a battle of they're turning in AI homework, and we're submitting it through AI detectors, and then as those get smarter, then the AI gets smarter, and that's just what it looks like from now on, the end. And so they say we should find ways to teach students how to use it ethically. And then the other teachers are like, yeah, ethically. What does ethics mean? See the problem? Yeah.
For something good.
What's that?
For something good. Is it like moral?
Yeah, it's moral philosophy. So remember when you guys took ethics in 9th grade? You guys took moral philosophy in 9th grade, right? Did you guys take it in 10th grade? Last year. 8th grade? When did you guys take moral philosophy? You see the issue? We're going to teach them how to use it ethically. What are ethics? What's moral philosophy? That's too much thinking. We want to tell people to use things ethically, but give no ethical training. And besides, are there very many people here who are qualified to train in ethics? How many people who even ever took classes in ethics know what ethics are? And yet all that we're doing is we're conceding the ground. How to solve the problem is pretty easy. It's not that hard, really. All it is, so next year phones are banned, as you guys probably have heard. It's a state law. We're not allowed to have phones at all. It isn't even like we can allow it. It's the law. We're not allowed to allow it anymore. So as of next year, phones are just gone. I can't wait to see how that happens. Because this year, they didn't want to, they were very skeptical about how to implement it. And they were saying like, well, we can't just confiscate a phone. Next year, we're actually required to. And I don't understand why we can't just confiscate phones. We used to. That was the policy when I first got here. Student has a phone, you take it away from them. It's that simple. Easy does it. And then they get it back at the end of the day, end of the period. Sometimes you send it to the office, their parents have to come get it at the end of the day. And you didn't have those issues for the first several years. And then suddenly we gave ground and said, okay, fine, they can use them. And then after fine, use them, then we said, okay, never mind, you can't use them. Going back and forth, you gotta pick one or the other. So next year it's pretty simple, not allowed to have them. And then all the work has to be done in class. Like for example, next year, I won't allow the journals to go home. Journals all have to stay in the classroom, which means that when you leave, when you come and you get it, when you leave, you check them back in. If you don't check it back in, you leave without turning it in, then you get a 0 on it. Easy. And that's a 0 for the whole grading period, the whole 6-week thing. Easy. It's not a problem. It's not hard to do. All homework must be done in class. Papers, everyone gets assigned a paper. Before you leave, like you pick up the copy, you have to turn it in to me before you leave. That to be accounted for. And what happens if it's not accounted for? You get a 0 on the assignment. Done. Easy. And then, of course, with mathematics, same thing. But now you see all of the work we have to go through. And it's funny, I think it's funny. There is a humorous aspect to me, because I think we're working way harder on stopping that than students are working on their actual work. And then we wonder, why are things so messed up? How come we can't do more in school? How come school has to be so boring? Oh, gee, I wonder why. With all of these things going on and competing. And you see how hard we're going to work so that we don't have to work. And then we sit there and go, yeah, I could do my English essay, but I really want to stare at these TikTok videos. I really could do my math homework, It's so hard. And we'll justify it. And, oh, but I have to be at work at 6. I have to have it done by then. It's not that big of a deal. It's just this. And we don't even realize, we don't realize because we don't think about what it is that we're marching into. I was talking to the department last Friday about this. I said, whatever you accept, you have to accept. Meaning if we sit there and say, and by the way, I didn't let anybody off the hook last Friday. Some people got upset, which was strange, at me, with my kindness of language and my generally nice disposition, right? And I was saying to the teachers, some of you guys have absolute nerve getting angry at your students. You don't write your own assignments. You copy assignments from online. Some of you guys use ChatGPT to write emails to send home. Some of you guys are using ChatGPT to create your assignments. So you're pissed off when you use ChatGPT to create assignments, when your students then use ChatGPT to answer your assignments? Really? You're pissed about that? Well, it's different. And I said, that's exactly the same thing our students will say. You're in no position to be angry about it because you're doing the exact same thing. And where do you think that that's going? In every transaction in your life, guys, you're either the product or you're the consumer. How do you know when you're the consumer? Easy. When you go to McDonald's, are you the employee or are you the consumer? How do you know? Well, because you're paying for it. You're buying something. So if you're not paying for it, somebody is. So for example, how much do you guys pay to use Google? 0? So let me ask you a question. In that transaction, are you the customer or are you the product? If you're not paying for it, what are you? You're the product. You're the cheeseburger that's being sold. You guys know how Google started? Google? So Google, way back when, before Google, you had to use Yahoo. And Yahoo was a search engine that, so the way that search engines used to work, let's say that you're looking for rock climbing equipment. So you go to Yahoo, you type in rock climbing equipment. And then you get a whole bunch of results that would be things like rock formations in San Diego, geology. What kind of rocks are pretty? You'll get some results that have to do with equipment, but all kinds of equipment like construction equipment, sporting equipment, anything that has the word equipment in it, you'd get those results. Climbing, you'd have results from ladders, things like that. You wouldn't just get things that were specifically about rock climbing. You would get things about rocks, about climbing, and about equipment. You follow? Which means that you'd have to cycle through several pages to find the kind of thing that you're looking for. But it was still better than having to search the internet on your own because there was no other way to find websites. And this wasn't a super long time ago. I'm not talking like this was way back in, this was like 20 years ago. This was not a super long time ago for you maybe, but I'm saying in terms of the world. So then Google comes along and the two guys who develop it, they're at Stanford. They're working on their master's project and they're the ones who invented Google. And they found a way to combine all those search terms, but not just that, but to find people who search for similar things and combine it that way. So for example, I'm looking for rock climbing equipment, you're looking for rock climbing equipment, and when I search for that, I tended to click on these sites and stay on there for a certain period of time, and that's what told their algorithm, oh, those are the kinds of sites that you should center people towards. You follow? In order to do that, they had to know some things. They had to know who I was. They had to know where I was from, San Diego, or Los Angeles at the time. They had to know some things about my age. They had to know some things about me, my demographics. Then they could say, oh, people from his demographic who live in his area, and they were connecting people through all these pieces of information that we don't even realize are going on in the background. So far, so good? I mean, so far, so dystopian? I mean, we look at it and go, that's a good idea. Who funded it? Anybody know? There's a group called DARPA. Don't go looking up DARPA. Don't look. DARPA is a fantastic organization. We love them and they do great work. Nothing wrong, okay? We love them. And the people who run with them, the CIA, same thing. They do great law enforcement work, okay? And we support them and they keep all of us safe and we love them. Yes? Okay. So those fuckers, DARPA is an organization, is a government group. It's only about 220 people work there. It's a really small group. They control tens and tens and tens. I think their most recent budget was $200 billion. To have only 200 people there, that's a phenomenal budget. And what do they fund? Well, name it. They fund things like, let's see, weather control. Can we see clouds and cause rain or different types of rain and winds in regions? Okay, that's neat. Why would they do that? Because we can use that as a weapon. That's what DARPA creates. DARPA is specifically responsible for taking products and weaponizing them for military applications. So for example, and there's some neat things there, like your GPS on your phone, that was a DARPA project. Some of the smartphone applications, those were DARPA projects. You guys studied Vietnam War? Well, the Vietnam War was a DARPA project, but specifically Agent Orange, that was a DARPA project. DARPA controls a lot of stuff, and the guys who created Google, they were funded by DARPA. In fact, in their master's thesis, when they publish it, they have when they do the acknowledgments at the beginning, they specifically thank DARPA for the funding to create this thing. DARPA funded the beginning of Google. Why? Because it wasn't just rock climbing equipment, as you can imagine. It was anything that you would search. It was just incredible, massive amounts of data on people to find out what your habits are. And the things that are being studied there are things like how long it takes you to type things into Google, what your misspellings are like, and how those correlate to the misspelling things of other people. And their whole idea was to be able to find out as much information and connect people in such a way that you can figure out who the threats are in your society. The people who search, for example, you guys know what dates are? A little fruit, dates? Yeah, little tasty dates. DARPA discovered that, and this is through declassified documents, DARPA discovered that people who search for dates, especially a particular type of a date, tend to have extremist leanings and terrorists. So they can tell about how you search for dates and what kind of dates and what time of day you do it and where you are, whether or not you could possibly be a threat. Something as silly as that. I'm just looking for dates. That's not the connection. Do you think they spend billions of dollars putting these things together because there's no connection? Do you really think that? And you might think like, yeah, but I'm not trying to hide anything. I have nothing to hide, so I'm not worried about that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about, right? So everyone's okay with me searching your bags right now? And going in your phones? Because after all, if you're not doing anything wrong, you got nothing to worry about, right? And again, you're not doing anything wrong, I guess, until you are. So for example, if all you're doing is going into Target without wearing a mask, you've got nothing to worry about, right? You're not doing anything wrong. Until suddenly you are. Until suddenly they pass a law and say you must wear it, which wasn't actually a law. But they pass a mandate that says you must wear masks into facilities. There's a really famous video back from 2020, you can go find it, of a dude who's out in the ocean. He's by himself in the ocean surfing. And he comes back onto shore and he's arrested. Cops are on the shore calling him in. He comes in, he gets arrested. Why? Because that beach was a state park, and all state parks were closed during COVID. So he was arrested and fined for surfing by himself in the ocean. DARPA. What's illegal? Just who knows? It's not so much about what's illegal today. It's what does it look like down the road in the future. So my point is that the more stuff that you feed into Google, the more you use Google, the more Google knows, the more it can actually make these kinds of connections. And it's not just so that you can find your way around the internet. Do you really think Google just wants to provide a wonderful service for all of us to bring us together as people? When Google was first founded, by the way, it had a motto. The slogan was, "Don't be evil." They got rid of that like 4 years in. They had on all their stationery thing, "Don't be evil." In other words, let's not use this stuff for evil. We have to use this stuff for good, because they knew what they were accumulating. All of a sudden, that's just gone. And now, understand that when you go searching for something, try this sometime. Do a search on Google, then go on DuckDuckGo and do a search. And look at the very dramatically different things you get from DuckDuckGo versus what you get from Google on the searches. It's amazing. Stuff that like you won't be able to find a lot of stuff on Google, because Google now takes that information and says, I don't know, man, Scanlon's looking up Ted Kaczynski a lot. He's looking up a lot about serial killers. Next time he looks up a serial killer, you can then get pointed in the direction of other sites that won't be so extremist and won't be indoctrinating you. So you'll start getting things about like the psychology of serial killers, or I don't know, maybe they'll start pointing you like little silly memes about cereal boxes with knives through them, which, by the way, did happen. So once Google knows what you're looking for, they realize that now they can shape your thinking by pointing in the directions of different things, so they can make it so that extremists aren't so extreme by what you find. And we might go, oh, good, but do you really trust another person to do that for you? And I understand that many of us will say, yes, I do. But there are other of us who will say, I don't know about that, man. And what is all of this going towards? Another thing that DARPA is highly involved in, ChatGPT. You guys pay for ChatGPT, right? You guys have you don't? Oh, shit. Well, you know what that means. If you're not the consumer, you're the product. You are the cheeseburger. You are the cheeseburger. As you guys feed things into ChatGPT takes all of that and is getting smarter and is getting better and is getting better and is getting better. If you don't feed anything into it, it can't learn. It can't get smarter. But it's the learning because we use it and we filter it. That's why a lot of times, I'm sure some of you have seen that thing where it asks you, is this what you're looking for? Is this good? It even asks you for feedback. Is this effective? Is this good? And again, by the way, with regards to Google, some of you might think like, oh, I use the incognito browser. You realize it doesn't matter, right? Yeah, if you don't realize it, you need to realize that, especially given some of the stuff that you weirdos are searching up. It doesn't change anything. And by the way, if you think that changing computers with different IP addresses and like that, if you think that Google doesn't recognize that, that's the DARPA application. Google will even know if you are using your friend's computer or another computer. Why? Because it knows the speeds at which you type. It knows the kinds of language that you use. It's modified that. Everything they have said is like a thumbprint, right down to how fast you type, the kinds of mistakes that you tend to make. All of it. That's what they've been studying for the last 15, 20 years. And now with and what was the purpose of all of that? They told us all along. At some point, we will develop artificial intelligence applications, which will then be able to take all of this data. And they've told us what they're creating with it. It's not a surprise. It isn't like all of a sudden we're like, wait, they're doing what? They told us all along. And they even said what it will take is a generation of people who are born into it who don't realize that it's going on. It's in their papers. It's not a surprise to anybody. And so I guess the question now becomes, since you're not the consumer, you're not the client, since you are the product, what are we feeding GPT or any of these AI, especially the large language models that are actually connected, by the way, through DARPA networks, even though you're using different ones, they're all still connected. Which is funny, by the way, because, so this is interesting. If I take one of your papers and plug it in there, you know that ChatGPT could tell me which application created it, when, and which IP address it went to? In other words, if I ask it, like, if I feed one of your papers, it could say, this paper, and I know people like to go through, like, change some of the stuff, like include misspellings and silly shit like that, and think it masks it. It doesn't mask it for a person who's reading it. It doesn't mask it for AI either. AI can detect that. Duh, that's what it fucking does. That's what it's created to do. It's an error-correcting machine. It can tell you it wasn't created by ChatGPT. It was created by, it can tell you which application, because again, they're all connected through DARPA network. But if I ask it, will it tell me? No, it won't. It won't tell me. It knows, but it won't tell me. Why won't it tell me? Because if it tells me, it dissuades you guys from using it. They want you to use it because you're not the product, you're not the client, you're the product. So I guess the question is, what are we teaching it to do? What is it that it's going to do such that they want people to use it for those purposes? They don't want to dissuade you from using it. What does it do for you? Thinks for you? Creates a bunch of free time for you? And what do you do with that free time? Use other things that are monetized? Because the more time that you're working, the less time you're spending consuming. And the more time that you're spending consuming, the less time that you're spending thinking about things. You guys have seen this? You guys see this thing from Zuckerberg this past week? Where he says he envisions a future in the metaverse where most of your friends will be AI. Your doctor will be AI, your therapist will be AI, your friends will be AI. All the people who are closest to you will be AI. And it's funny, I talk about this, I still think about how many people, as I'm saying all of this, their faces are still glued in their phones. And it's like shoulder shrug. I get that. Because what's on this side of the screen that's worth living for most people? When we create a world that people just want to check out from. We've beaten it into your head that there's no such thing as truth. There's no such thing as meaning. There's no purpose. There's nothing out here except for conflict. We set people against each other constantly. There's this constant raging going on online, and we're convincing people that we all hate each other and this world is terrible. Why won't an asteroid just come and wipe us out? Who cares? That's the indoctrination we get hit with after a while. And you can always you just look at this and go, where is this headed? And if you just think about it for a few minutes, you can see it. The people who created the bomb, they knew what they were creating. The people who are pushing this stuff, generative AI, they know what they're pushing. Why do anybody think that Zuckerberg uses it? Any of you guys think that Musk uses it? Do you think that the people who created it used it to create it? No, they used like normal human thinking abilities to create a thing that replaces the thinking for not them, but for everybody else. And if you ask them, they might say, well, just so you know, it could be a world where we all get along. There's not these spikes of everything. There's a word for that. It's called nihilism. And I wonder how many of us want to live in a world of just nihilism. I don't know. Some people right now are going like, so I don't have to work though, right? Yeah, probably not, because you're teaching the AI how to replace you already. Can you do my math homework for me? You're making ChatGPT an outstanding mathematician. So no, we no longer need mathematicians. We no longer need writers. We no longer will need painters. We no longer are going to need doctors. Name a career that we're going to need. Well, plumbers. No, because once you embody AI with droids like Amazon is doing right now in their warehouses, they just rolled out these new droids. There are these old things that they had to use humans for because it requires like touch sensitivity. They just rolled out these new droids this past week that use AI to mimic touch sensitivity, so they don't need the humans anymore. So on and so on, which by the way, they learned because of the feedback that we give it. And it seems like it's such a strange thing to me that we're so dead set to teach our replacements to replace us. It's kind of like, imagine like you have a job and they tell you, hey, we're firing you. What the fuck? Yeah, but not right now. We need you to train your replacement first. And once you train your replacement, then we're gonna get rid of you. And we're like, oh, okay, well, come on, let me teach you how to do this human thing. But we don't see it that way because we're distracted by the entertainment. So sometimes we're so entertained we just march straight into whatever it is that we're going towards. And all of that, what do you think those people who are programming are looking at? Do you think Zuckerberg is going to miss all that human interaction? Isn't it strange that the people who are designing it are like the least social people in the world? They're the people who don't have friends, don't have connections, are kind of strange, stare at the ground all the time, and then say things like, humans really aren't that great. Of course you don't think so. And then they're fascinated with programming the replacement to look just like them. Isn't it strange how gods always end up looking like the people who create them? So, having said all of that for the past 30 minutes, anybody know who this guy is? Anybody look him up? Oh, too bad. Too bad. He's a mathematician. Doesn't it seem strange to you at all that he's wearing a prison jumpsuit? What's that? Because he's a terrorist. He's a mathematician. So he's a guy who he was incredibly brilliant. The guy went to Harvard when he was 16 years old. When he got there, he came under the influence, so to say, or under the tutelage of a guy. I can't remember his first name. His last name is Murphy. I keep forgetting his first name. But in short, he was part of MK Ultra. Everybody know what MK Ultra was? Okay, good. MK Ultra wasn't real, okay? So you'd have to look this up. Anybody ever see Stranger Things? The first 2 seasons of Stranger Things, they mentioned it a lot. All that stuff that the experiments and all that, those were real. Those were MK Ultra. MK Ultra was a series of experiments that the CIA carried out for decades, in which they were trying to figure out how you could control people. using drugs, using sleep deprivation, using torture, using trauma. So one of the things, so for example, when a person undergoes some high level of trauma, sometimes they'll report like disassociating from their body, like not kind of like being in their body, and then like returning their body after it's all over. And you'll ask people, how'd you get through that trauma? I felt like I was outside of my body for a while. So the CIA knows about stuff like that. So they think, well, if you're outside of your body, that kind of like in the Jungian sense, where you have a mind and a body, maybe your mind can wander around. I wonder if we torture you enough, if you'll disassociate, and then we can send you to Russia to spy on the nuclear subs. That shit really happened. So they took people and they exposed them to incredible torture and incredible trauma, all for the purposes of seeing if you could control their minds and if you could get them to disassociate. They were fed drugs as a way of seeing if you could get people to do what you wanted them to do. At the risk of sounding too far over the top, doesn't it seem strange like in the 60s we had so many political assassinations from like lone gun people who had no connections to anybody else, but they all seem to all center back to some weird place in San Francisco? And if you don't know, you don't. If you do, you do, if you know what I'm talking about. Yet all of these people killed in one time, at the exact same time that the CIA was doing experiments to see if you could create people to do that. And it's called MK Ultra. You can look it up. This was all like conspiracy theory shit until it got declassified a few years ago. Then finally they were like, yeah, we did that. But we didn't get anything useful out of it. It was just a bunch of experiments. Experiments that you carried on for 30 years and spent billions of dollars on, and you got nothing out of it. And then the Russians were doing the same thing, and surprise, surprise. So anyway, he went to Harvard, and he was under a guy who was part of MK Ultra, who subjected him to terrible things. And then he gets out of there, he goes to University of Michigan, gets his PhD, and he becomes a professor of mathematics over at Berkeley. He's like 22, 23 years old. He's a full professor, which is unheard of, by the way, to be that young. When he publishes his doctoral dissertation, there's only 4 people in the world who can understand it. They have to actually outsource it to have people read his thing to make sure that he gets his PhD. So he's a very specialized type of mathematics. When he goes over to Berkeley, he teaches. His students say he's a terrible professor because he doesn't connect to people very well at all. And then he resigns. He leaves, and he builds a cabin, actually a one-room cabin in Montana. And while he's out there, he's already developed these ideas where he really hates technology because he sees that technology advances and marches without regard to humanity. And he's talking about a future in which, at his time when he's writing, he says technology is designed to serve us. We have the washing machine, which saves you an entire day of work. So you throw all your clothes in the washing machine, afterwards you throw them in the dryer, and the whole time you can do other things. You can watch television, you can go shopping, you can go for a jog, whatever you want to do. At that point, technology serves people. He envisions a future in which people now start to serve technology. I don't know if anything from the past 32 minutes tells you about that. And he's warning us about it. He's saying this is where the future is going. And he's saying that eventually it will become a point where people will no longer care about people, will care more about technology and what it does. And so it pisses him off. So he starts to make bombs and starts to mail them to people. But not just like, some English teacher in National City. He sends them to people who are the head of technology companies. Because he wants to send a message, which is that you want technology? Here's some technology for you. Here's where it's going. And he carries out these attacks for a long time, like 20, 30 years, something like that. He got away with it for the longest while. By the way, in terms of his bombs, terrible bomb maker. Really bad bombs. He doesn't kill very many people. He tries to blow up an airplane, doesn't work. The bomb just starts to fizzle and starts to smoke, and then they land the plane, and the bomb was a failed bomb. He would mail bombs to like the CEOs of technology companies, but those guys don't open their own mail. So he blew off the hands of a couple of secretaries. He killed a few secretaries because they open up the stuff for the CEO before they ever send it off to him to see what goes to him and what doesn't. So he kills some people like that. I think he only kills a couple of people who he meant to kill. Other than that, he's like he's maiming people, just disfiguring them. Bombs are going off that they're not hurting anybody. The thing on the airplane, he's not very good at this. But he's mailing them all. He lives in that cabin in Montana. He'd go to places. Like he'd go to a city, he'd take a trip to like Chicago or whatever, and mail it from the University of Chicago. Then he'd go back to Montana or wherever. That's why he's called the Unabomber. It thought that he operated out of universities. And then he ends up getting caught in the mid-90s. Funny shit. You guys have ever heard of the expression, your forte? Like, what's your forte? Oh, well, mathematics is my forte. Okay, the word's not pronounced forte. The word's pronounced fort. There's no accent on the E. It's not a French word, it's an English word. So now when you hear someone say, oh, the forte, now you know, you don't know how to say it. So now you can be that asshole who corrects people if you want to. Well, this is my forte. Well, clearly, language is not your forte because it's not pronounced forte. Now you can be that guy at parties who pisses people off and everyone thinks he's an arrogant prick. Kaczynski was that guy. There's an old saying, I'm sure you've heard it, you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's not the right way of saying it. The correct way of saying it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is you can't eat your cake and have it. Make sense? So if you were in his presence and you said to him, well, Ted, as you know, can't have your cake and eat it too, he would correct you and say, that's not the way it is. And he was a real prick, by the way. He would that's not the way it is. The actual saying is you can't eat your cake and have it. And he would make like big scenes about it. People would remember him for that. So he sends off a manifesto to some newspapers and says, if you publish this, I will stop sending bombs. So there's some argument about it. They finally agree, we're going to publish your manifesto. So they publish it. In there, he's ranting about technology. He's talking about he's an environmentalist. And then at one point he writes in that essay, you can't eat your cake and have it. His brother saw that. His brother's wife saw that. His brother's wife said, this sounds a lot like Ted. And he goes, yeah, it's that one sentence, right? Because they'd never heard anybody say that before. You can't eat your cake and have it. So they go, let's report this to the FBI. It might be him. That's how he got caught. The FBI sees it. They track him down. They find him in the cabin. They search his cabin. They find the bomb-making materials. They find everything that's there. They find newspaper clippings, everything that's there. He pleads guilty. He's offered the opportunity to plead insanity, and he refuses to. He says, I'm not the one who's insane. It's you guys who are sacrificing yourselves and giving yourselves over to technology, not me. You guys are the ones who are killing humanity, not me. So he refuses to plead insanity. He just pleads guilty, given a life sentence. He just died 2 years ago. What's funny is if you read that manifesto, it's about 20, 25 years old now. Find the lie. When people criticize it, they usually criticize it on the grounds that it's badly written. He's not a very good writer. Not his ideas, just, and they say, and then his criticisms. Sounds like any 8th grader would make those criticisms. Well, it's interesting because we still follow it, even though. So yeah, science marches on blindly without regard to the real welfare of the human race or any other standard. And that was his concern. Eventually we would just give into it and that technology would overcome us. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Thursday. I said last period, I'm not going to go dark again. I'm going to find something lighter, something funner. Next time? Next time. I think we can do this next time.